What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Adventure Outpost. It is another episode of the Weekly Report, our wonderful report where we go into everything, books, movies, and music that I had picked up for the week, that I had watched for the week, that I had read, that I'm going to read, all that good stuff. We're going to do it here right now today. Our haul is not that big for this week. It was kind of light. I'm trying to just recuperate still back from Disney. So we're not really picking too much stuff up. We're just picking out new stuff that comes up. Books, I did hit a nice used bookstore. So I got a few books for cheap this week that we're going to go into. But we'll kick it off first with the movies that we picked up. As far as new titles that came out this past week, not a lot. So we just picked up the Sing 2 4K that came out. This is actually, it was a pretty fun movie. I like the Sing movies. They're cute. They're good for a decent little bit of animation there. You could do worse. And then we picked up Marry Me, which we're actually going to talk about later for movies that we watched this past week. But we picked up this movie also, J-Lo and Owen Wilson. And that was all for the new releases, but my fiance picked up this week that she needed in the collection was the 4K of Divergent. This is one of her favorite movies of all time, so she needed to have this bad boy in the collection, and now we got it in there. And then we got the DVD of this movie, The Oranges. I've never even heard of it, but it was something that she had on a podcast that she wanted to pick up because it has a bunch of people that she likes. So at some point we're going to get into it and actually watch this movie, but not anytime soon probably because I don't want to watch it. But now on to the books that we picked up. We'll start with the books that we picked up and then we'll do stuff that I read this past week. I finished off the Misery collection between I have a hardcover and now I got the awesome paperback to go with it. Which is this old style Signet Stephen King ones. I have a whole bunch of his books in this Signet format, so to get to add Misery to that pile is pretty fucking awesome. Misery is a great book. I've read it so many times. It's fucking awesome. The movie's amazing. If you've only seen the movie, you should read the book. If you've only read the book, you should see the movie, vice versa. It's great fucking stuff right there. I picked up The General's Daughter from Nelson DeMille. I've read a lot of his newer stuff. I want to go back into the back catalog and read all of his other stuff. I've seen the movie The General's Daughter when I was younger, and it was really fucking good and intense. So I'm really looking forward to reading the book now too. This is the paperback that we picked up. It looks like it is a Warner Books one. If we could find the hardcover to go with it, that would be sick. But until then, we just got this bad boy to go on. One of the newer David Baldacci books that I still have to read is Mercy. I have been holding off because at Barnes & Noble's it's like $30 and that's fucking a lot for a book. But I found this at a used bookstore for the low price of $3. So that is fucking awesome. That's why you should always check your used bookstores, people. So I can't wait to hop into this one and read it. I need to read it because the next book he's coming out with, I think in this month, is an Atlee Pine thriller. So I definitely need to check out the last one before I can get to the next one. And then I got some old David Baldacci that I still have to read. We got Simple Genius here in hardcover, and we've got The Collectors. These are old books. I have a lot of hardcovers from Baldacci, so it's really cool now to add some more hardcovers. It'd be nice if I can get the entire collection in hardcover of all of his books. I think I'm about halfway there. This man, he's a machine. He puts out so many books. I think he puts out like 2-3 books a year. He just never slows down, man. He's a fucking machine. But he's one of my favorite writers. Love him. He's the man. I can't wait to hop in all these books and knock these ones out of the park. As far as reading goes, I read a lot this week. I got a lot of stuff done. 2 books that were really easy to finish, so I got those done in like one sitting. One book that I was reading for the majority of the week because it was just so fucking good. And another book, I don't know if I showed it last week, but I don't think I finished it by the time I did the weekly report last week. I think I had finished it that night after I recorded it. So I'm just going to show it again just in case we didn't. If I did, ignore it. If I didn't, then we're showing it here for the first time. But it is the book Disclosure by Michael Crichton. This is the last Michael Crichton book I had left to read. I've seen the movie is freaking awesome. So I always wanted to read the book. Thankfully, I had found it at a used bookstore for $2. Finally got a chance to read it on the flights to and from Disney, and I finished it right when I got back from Disney that Monday. Book, it was really freaking good. Michael Crichton is just such a phenomenal writer, and the way that he can just blend like techno thrillers out of like anything is so good. Like, this is like technically like a techno thriller that just deals with the sexual harassment claim in a huge, big tech company. It's just so inventive for its time. It's very clever. The characters are great. It's just a really good fucking book. If you haven't read Disclosure or seen the movie, get yourself on that, because both of those are really freaking good. Then we'll go through the easy books that I read this week. Two of them that I read in one sitting was the fourth Goosebumps book, Say Cheese and Die. This is probably the best Goosebumps book I've read so far. I mean, I've read them all when I was like a little kid, but I don't remember any of them. So now that I'm going back and collecting them again, I want to read them again and see like how they hold up as an adult. The other ones, the Stay Out of the Basement was fine. It wasn't terrible, but Monster Blood was brutal. This one is super entertaining, though, about a Polaroid camera that a bunch of kids find that when you take a picture of it, it shows some horrific thing that's going to happen in the future, and some really crazy shit starts happening to these kids. It's super fun. It's a super fun, inventive one. This was the first Goosebumps book that I read out of that series that really showed that, like, wow, this could have some legs if he like keeps making stories like this. So this one was really good. It was awesome to read. And it's only like, these books are cool because they're only like 100-something pages, so you could bang these out in one sitting, depending on how fast you read. I am a pretty fast reader, so I was able to bang that out in just under an hour. Another book that I banged out in one sitting, I actually read this Friday night at work while I was waiting for movies to break and get out and be done with for the night. I read this entire book, and it is The Oxbow Incident. This is an older book. My fiance's dad gave me this to read. Said it was a really good Western, that I would like it, and he was right. It's a really good book. Follows these two guys that get roped into a posse that go to try and hang a bunch of guys that are suspected of killing a rancher. It is a really good book that looks into what makes men or people back in that time like so prone to violence and like so bloodthirsty at times. It's a really good fucking book. I wasn't expecting to like it so much. It starts off a little slow, but once it really starts getting into it, where the rancher ends up dead and they start forming the posse, the rest of the book is just fucking phenomenal, and I flew through it so quickly. This is a really good old classic literature book. So if you're looking for some classic literature to read, The Oxbow Incident is definitely one you should pick up and read. And then finally, the best book that I read this week, it was fucking phenomenal. It was one of the last, or not one of the last, I still have a bunch of Stephen King books to read, but I'm slowly whittling down away. But this is one that I've always wanted to read for the longest time. I finally found it at a used bookstore for $4, picked it up, couldn't wait to dove into it. It is Needful Things. This book is fucking phenomenal. It's about a proprietor that opens up a shop called Needful Things in this random sleepy town called Castle Rock. And it turns out that he's kind of like, I guess like in a way, the devil, but he sells these items, but he doesn't really sell them. Like, he sells them for cheap, but then he also wants you to pull like a prank or a trick for him. But it turns out that everything that they end up buying and doing comes with a price where it starts to steal a little bit of their soul, and they become they just get sucked into this item, and they like forget everything about themselves in the outside world, and they turn into just these like vengeful people. And it starts all these like slow fights and stuff around town, and all the people start turning on each other and becoming like rabid. And you follow like the one cop who's smart enough to like not go in there and buy anything as he starts to figure out all this shit that's going on in town. It is a really good fucking book. It's a nice slow burn too. Like, it takes its time getting into it. It's a meaty book. I think it's a little over 700 pages. I read it in 3 sittings. It is just fucking phenomenal. It's a very fun book. You should definitely read it if you love your Stephen King. It's even if you like horror, read this book. This is just such a fun book. I couldn't put it down. I just absolutely tore through this one. And now for what we watched this week. I watched a decent amount. Not a crazy amount, but more than I have been in the past few weeks. I did a video a while ago of my top 25 favorite movies of 1984, end of 1985, and then I ended up stopping because I hadn't seen 25 movies in 1986. So I had to start building my way up, and then I just never did it, and everything fell to the wayside. But I started doing it again recently, and I started it this week, where I watched a 1986 movie called No Mercy. This movie, I'll save most of my thoughts because I do want to make that 1986 video with my top 25 of 1986. Maybe this will make it, maybe it won't. It's supposed to be like a noir thriller. It has some moments of a noir thriller. For the most part, it's more of like a crime thriller. Richard Gere and Kim Basinger are both good in it, but for the most part, the story of this movie is fucking bananas and very silly. And the whole middle of that movie just absolutely grinds to a halt, and it's so fucking slow. With the exception of like the first 15 minutes and then the last 15 minutes, this movie leaves a lot to be desired. After that, I watched the movie Gerald's Game on Netflix. That is a Stephen King adaptation. I'm also trying to watch as many of the Stephen King adaptations as I can, so that I can make a video where I can rank or do whatever and talk about all of the Stephen King adaptations along with their books. Because I've read a large majority of Stephen King books. I have very few of them left to read, but I've read most of the books that have adaptations. Gerald's Game was one of the few ones I had left, so I had to bang that one out. It is a really solid movie. It is very impressive how they were able to make a decent movie out of that book, because that's a tough book, I would imagine, to make an adaptation of. When I read that book, it was like, it's really good because you can get into the mind of the character in book form. It was one of those ones as I'm reading it that was just like, I don't know how you can make a movie out of this. And I had read it long before they ever made the adaptation. And then when they were making it, I was like, fuck, I can't wait to see that movie. I really got to see how it turns out. And then I never watched the movie. So I finally got around to it now, and it's super impressive how they were able to do it. It was very inventive. The guy who did it, Mike Flanagan, I'm not surprised he was able to make a good one out of it, because he's fucking Stephen King adaptation king right now. He did that, Dr. Sleep. He is just crushing it. He also did like all the Haunting on Hill Houses and Midnight Mass. He's a fucking phenomenal horror guy. He's just incredible. So I'm not surprised that the movie turned out as well as it did. I watched the new for 2022 movie on HBO Max, Moonshot, with Cole Sprouse, where him and this other girl like stow away on a spaceship so that they can go see their like significant others on Mars. It's really fucking stupid. It was not great. It was one of those ones that you just watch because it was a new movie, and I was trying to watch as much as I can in 2022 when it comes out. And that was just one where you just go through the motions to watch it, because you're just like, this movie is not great. And then another movie to go, it was better, the next movie was better than that one, but it still kind of falls into that category, and that was another new for Netflix movie that came out in March, and it is the movie Windfall with Jason Segel, Jesse Plemons, and Lily Collins. It is a movie that has no idea what it wants to be. You don't know if it's supposed to be a thriller, a comedy. It jumps back and forth. It's such a weird genre that it never finds its footing. It's all over the place. The best part going for it is that it's only 90 minutes long, so you get through it pretty quickly, but it was one of those movies that you're watching it and you're just like, I don't really know what the fucking point of this movie is. And then it ends and you're just like, wow, that felt like a complete waste of time. After that, I watched the new, for this past weekend, April 1st Netflix movie, The Bubble, which may be one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. It was not funny. It was brutal. It was one of those movies that is such a waste of all the talented people that are in it, both in front and behind the camera. It just missed its mark completely for me. I can't stand anything that has to do with making movies about COVID, and this one just dialed it up trying to make a spoof of it, and they just did an absolutely horrid job. It is not funny. It's way too fucking long. No spoof movie should be 2 hours long. Like, Judd Apatow just can't help himself. Every time he makes a comedy, it's got to be pushing 2 hours. It's all over the place. As much as I love Karen Gillan and Pedro Pascal and David Duchovny and Leslie Mann and everybody else that's in it, it is just one of those movies that is an absolute fucking slog to get through. Brutal. And then last night, I watched a twofer with my fiance. We watched The Weekend Away, which was another new Netflix movie that came out back in March with Leighton Meester, where she goes to visit a friend in Croatia. They go out and get blackout drunk, and then in the morning, her friend is missing, and she must go on a nice little adventure to try and figure out what happened to her. It's exactly as you would expect it to be. It is not very good, but it's not the worst. It definitely ended up being better than what I thought it would be. I thought it was just going to be brutal to sit through, but I was like, all right, it's only like 90 minutes. Like, we can get through this. But it ended up being a little, at least entertaining. It didn't, like, you weren't sitting there checking your phone all the time. You managed to get through it. But it still wasn't great. But that's a glowing review for that movie. And then after that, of course, we watched Marry Me, the new romantic comedy from Owen Wilson and J-Lo. it is brutal. Never mind the fact that it's the most inanely stupid plot you like ever heard of. It's just, like, especially when they play it out, that she's just like, if you want something, expect different. Like, and then she's just like, yeah, I'll marry you, and he's just like, Doofy, like, just gets up there and doesn't say anything or voice any opposition to it. It's just so contrived. It feels like it's really fucking silly. There's some parts that are alright, like J-Lo and Owen Wilson are both charming people, so like they play off each other fine, but the story is just like so cliche ridden and just by the numbers that you're just like, I just need this to be over. And this is another one. It pushes almost 2 hours, and it's no business being 2 hours. Like, you could have shaved 10, 15 minutes off this movie, clocked it in at maybe 100 minutes and called it a day, and you wouldn't have lost anything. But that was the past. Now we're looking to the future. This week I plan on reading, I actually have the book Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King right now that I started last night that I will be reading. It's only like a little over 300 pages, so it shouldn't take me too long. So after that, I'm going to dive into David Baldacci's Mercy. So those are the two books I'll be reading this week. If I am able to get to a third one at that point, who knows what we'll dive into. We'll find out next week on the weekly report. But I imagine those two books will take up my next week of reading. Because I imagine I won't be reading so much because I will be playing a video game this weekend for the most part. I have been waiting for this game for almost 4 years now. The Lego Skywalker Saga is finally coming out. All 9 movies in the classic Lego game format. I love the Lego games. They're so much fun and easy and just enjoyable to play when you just want to pop in, play some like light video game, just ease back. The Lego games are your bread and butter. I'm so excited for this game. I can't wait to finally play it tomorrow. It comes out. So that's going to be a big portion of my free time in the next week is going to be playing that game. I don't imagine I'm going to get to very many movies. I'm going to see Morbius this week. I'm seeing The Lost City tomorrow with the missus. And then obviously this weekend I'll be seeing Sonic and Ambulance. I don't know if anything comes out streaming wise, but if it does, whatever that is, I'll probably pop that also. But those are really, I'm only going to stick with like new stuff. I don't see myself diving back into older movies that I haven't seen. I do want to watch more of the 1986 movies. Maybe I'll get to one. It really depends on how I'm feeling that day, if I'm going to want to play that video game or watch a movie. We'll see where it shakes. As far as writing has gone, I have about halfway through my second short story in the Teenage Wasteland story that I am writing. It's about 46 pages at this point, being halfway through, so I imagine I'm going to actually go right after I finish this video. I'm hoping to almost be done with it, or at least write the next portion so I can be like 3/4 of the way done. I imagine the story will clock in just under 100 pages for this short story, but we'll see how it goes. It all depends. You don't really know until you dive in there and start writing and see how much really comes out onto the page, but that's where I imagine it's going to clock in. So hopefully by next week's weekly report, I will have finished that short story and we will be moving on to the third short story in that collection. And then last but certainly not least is our pickups for this week. It's another light week come Tuesday, thank Christ, because we can't, there's so many movies coming out in May and everything on DVD that we need these light weeks right now to help pad the wallet. So there's not much that I'll be picking up this week. Really, the only big releases are Scream. They're releasing Jack Reacher on 4K Steelbook, and then Death on the Nile. I'm only going to be picking up Scream and Death on the Nile, that Jack Reacher one, if I do pick it up, even though I would like to have the Steelbook. It'll be somewhere down the line where I'll let that drop in price a little bit. That's not something I need to pick up day one, but I do want to get Scream and Death on the Nile day one to add into that collection of our new 2022 movies to have in the collection. But that is everything for me that we got going on, that we did the past week, everything that you could look forward from me for the week upcoming. And there's a lot of good stuff. It's going to be it's going to be a fun weekend of watching, reading, writing, playing. There's so much fun stuff to do. And now it's starting to get nice again. Amusement parks are opening up. So I will be back into the swing of things of going to amusement parks. I think next Sunday, hopefully, I will be going to Six Flags New England with the missus. So hopefully I'll get a fun little video from there. But that'll do it for now. I have been me, you have been you. These are the movies and all of the entertainment that we love. And until next time, adventure on, dudes.